Thank you, members of the committee. My name is Ann Chandler, and I respectfully ask you to vote no on HB 1554. For 7 years, I had the privilege of teaching at the University of Houston Law Center Immigration Clinic, so I know firsthand how this is going to negatively impact the community. The views I express today are my own. So why should tax dollars fund the representation of individuals who are currently unlawfully present? Because our laws are complicated, they're outdated, they're nuanced, and people need legal assistance to help them obtain or restore their lawful presence. A significant percentage of the cases that we represented during my 7 years were referred by immigration judges because of their complex, factual, and legal issues. We represented client after client who had done everything they could to possibly follow our laws and remain lawfully in this country. But for various circumstances, often domestic violence, violent crime, and flaws in our immigration systems, many of our clients faced an immigration judge and were subject to detention and potential deportation. When immigration agencies, such as our nation's overwhelmed immigration court and legal system, move quickly with very small budgets, mistakes are made. HB 1554 threatens to undermine critical due process protections for immigrants falsely accused of being wrongfully present or falsely accused to did not have a lawful basis to stay in the United States. We need lawyers to help individuals, including asylum seekers, present their cases. Second, our law students and legal system benefits when we fund access to justice.
Any questions, Chairman Anchia?
I do. Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, as I think through what this bill would cost the state, ultimately, in order for us to separate whether a person has a valid claim for asylum or not, it requires due process of some kind, right? We don't flip a coin. We don't, let a panel of Border Patrol agents decide that. We don't let the community at large decide that. We express our values and call balls and strikes on that issue usually through a court-based process. Is that right? Sometimes an administrative process, but more often not. As my first year law professor explained to me, due process is what is the process that is due to achieve the end, right? And so in this case, what does due process say for a person who is seeking to make a claim of asylum?
In our immigration system, the way it is right now with our outdated, very complex laws, it means legal help. And so here, this is not a bill that asks for state funding to be injected into our local communities or our law schools. What it is to permit, to try to destroy the status quo. It's trying to say immigration law schools that have an immigration clinic, you can no longer help individual in removal proceedings. And it's saying counties or cities that want to fund this, you can no longer do that. And what the impact of that is what does due process mean then? We have an overwhelming number of individuals with very complex cases that need the help of an attorney or supervised law students to step in and help explain to the judge who's got a pile of stacks, just one after the other. Judge, this is what this case is about.
And imagine how much less efficient that due process would be if everybody had to be pro se.
That's right. That's right.
And didn't even know how to talk to the court, didn't know how to speak in the language of the court, just did everything pro se.
That's right. And when this bill was introduced earlier today, it said that, it's questionable whether this type of representation is lawful under our federal laws. In fact, our federal government has many programs in the past throughout both Democratic and Republican governments that fund the representation of immigrants. When I was at the University of Houston, we managed a grant from the Department of Justice to serve individuals in the detention center under an understanding that, look, our judges save time and our detention centers need to spend much less money when legal representation and people understand what to expect of the court. Maybe they have no case. Then they can get there and say, Your Honor, I'm ready to go home. Or if they have a case, they'll know what to present or be able to find counsel. So yeah, the system just works a lot more efficiently when we have lawyers involved.
I recall when I was in law school, now this is before the web browser was invented, so many, many years ago. This is pre-Netscape in 1994. Our immigration clinic, now it was a private law school that did receive some public funding and grants for some of its clinic work. So I imagine it would get picked up under the auspices of this bill. But we would travel like 2.5 hours as law students, and we would go represent, at the time there were Cuban detainees that had come in the Mariel boat lift as conditional visa holders, conditional residents, and they had been convicted of some crime, but oftentimes had spent time in jail long beyond their sentence. Why? Why do you think that would be, that somebody would spend more time, say you got sentenced for 2 years and you had been in jail for 5 years? Why do you think that was? Well, it's because they could not be sent back to their country of origin. And there was an incentive in the prison system, by the way, to keep them locked up because they got federal funding. It was incredibly inefficient for the state because it clogged up the jails, but the jails made money. And so it was up to us, as we were simple law students, and we would go advocate for people in jail. Every once in a while, we could convince a three ALJ panel that these people should be released. And guess what? It opened up spots for the state to be able to lock people up who needed to be locked up, right? So
That's right. And then sometimes we would get calls from, for example, a Homeland Security investigation saying, we have discovered a human trafficking ring. And in this detention center, we had at one point, we got a list at the clinic of over 190 individuals who were believed to be survivors of trafficking. Could we work with local nonprofit survivors to go in and investigate and talk to them to help expedite and figure out who can be released safely into the community and what are their possibilities with their cases before the immigration court? It helps our community when we have lawyers involved. We can go after the bad guys and make sure that individuals who don't need to be behind bars are released.
thanks for the dialogue. I appreciate you being here. I saw you here all day, and I'm grateful for someone of your expertise coming to testify.
Thank you for all your attention today.